Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story in which an ordinary employee fought with his bosses over the dress code. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Got my employer to loosen their dress code. I worked for the medical insurance company with a shield of blue as my first real job after college. They had a 1950s dress code, such as women having to wear pantyhose and skirts or dresses. Men had to wear slacks, not jeans. Men's dress code also said dress shirts with tie and jacket or sweater. I wore bow ties just to be different, but got a talking to by my boss who was by-the-book ex-military, so the next day I came in wearing slacks and a light sweater. I didn't have to wait more than a half hour before I get called into the office and the yelling starts. I just stand there until he finally takes a breath, and I tell him I'd like to see the dress code. He gets PO'd and sends me to HR. I have a long talk with HR and tell them to read me the dress code. They say they're going to write me up. I tell them they have that right, but I will contact the Department of Labor and report them. I point out the comma, dress shirt with tie and jacket or sweater. They give me some BS about that not being what it means. They give me a warning. I return to work and write a letter to the Department of Labor after calling them. I was also in the clerical union and gave them a call. I continued to wear light sweaters every day, get sent to HR for a warning that turned into be written up, then threats to be fired. One note, I was not in a job that had any face-to-face dealings with the public, so only my coworkers saw how I was dressed. The union got involved with the state and meetings were held. During this time, I was constantly getting the stink eye from my boss, who was not allowed to discipline me without a union rep present. In the end, the old school dress code was thrown out and replaced with business casual. And our second story. Won't release my car? Great idea. I'll call the cops. This is a few years back, though I'm still driving my 2005 Santa Fe that's involved in this little dust-up. I'd just gotten a job in a different state, and because it was somewhat of a promotion, the company paid entirely for the move. After seeing all my stuff packed away safely, the movers started heading to the new state, but as they were driving a different route to avoid icy roads through the Rockies, they were going to take a little longer. So we drove through the night and ended up staying at a hotel. On the way over, I noticed my brakes started to vibrate just a bit on the descent into the new state, and they were squeaking a tad. New brake pads, maybe new rotors if they can't be machined. No big deal, right? So after we got our stuff unloaded and into the new place, I take the car to a mechanic shop that had good ratings and was even recommended to me by a coworker. But I swear they took a look at my out-of-state license plates and saw dollar signs. When I dropped the car off, I signed the work order for a tire rotation. I know I'm lazy, and a free inspection, just wanting them to confirm my suspicion on the brakes. I specifically told them not to do any work unless I specifically authorized them over the phone and in writing. You can probably guess what happened next. I call about an hour later to see what they'd found, and sure enough, the boss of the shop said that unfortunately, I not only needed new pads and rotors, but new calipers as well, totaling $1,200. But not to worry, as they'd already started working on it and would have it done in just a couple hours. Needless to say, I was pissed as all hell and told them I'd not authorized that, nor did I agree those repairs were likely necessary. I told them I'd be over in a minute to cease all work on the car and that I'd talk to him in person. On the way over, I called a different shop, one that had better ratings, and the one I eventually used for every car-related need after this for the rest of the time I lived in that state, and explained the situation. She said it was highly suspect that they wanted to replace the calipers, but that they'd be happy to give me a second opinion, of course, and that they usually ran around $300 for new pads and rotors. I always get a second and sometimes third opinion on non-emergency repairs like this, just because of the skewed incentives or the dodgy repair places that try to trump up what's needed, like the original place was doing. And that if he was right and the calipers needed to be replaced along with the rest of the brake assembly, I would happily have him bid on the work. He responded that he'd be happy to have my car towed to a different shop for $150, but that he was legally obligated to hold my car as it was an unsafe vehicle and he would be liable for any damages that ensued if my brakes were to fail should I leave. I knew this was bullcrap. We yelled for about 10 minutes with him every time refusing to budge, saying that he'd have it towed for $150 or do the repairs, nothing else. I told him he was committing grand theft auto and that I would call the cops if he didn't put my car back together and let me drive away. He told me to do that they'd back him 100%, and they might fine me for driving with completely destroyed brakes. So I did. I called the non-emergency police line and was eventually transferred to a very nice female police officer, and I calmly explained to her my situation. She was super helpful and confirmed, of course, that the mechanic had no legal basis to hold my car against my will, and although she did warn me that I was, of course, liable for any and all problems that might arise if I was indeed driving with bad brakes, it wasn't his problem. She actually laughed at him, saying he was liable if I got into a wreck after I left, and that he was in violation of the law. So I took my cell phone in and had him talk to her, and he proceeded to be a massive a-hole to her on the phone, at first not believing that she was, in fact, a real police officer, and then insisting that she didn't know what she was talking about. He'd done this before and knew the law. He still didn't believe she was a real, actual police officer, so she promised that she'd find out soon enough. She told me she said that after she handed the phone back to me. 15 minutes later, after I waited outside because I was really close to just losing it talking to this effing a-hole, a squad car rolls up and asks me where the manager is. They were informed already of the situation, walked up to the guy, and handed him something. I assume was either a ticket or a summons or something. They wouldn't tell me what afterwards, but they did look satisfied as hell and were super nice to me, and told him to put my car back together immediately and to let me go. This had all been over 4+ hours from the time I dropped my car off to the time they drove it out of the bay ready for me to drive away. And after that, he hands me a bill for $50 for a tire rotation and $100 for the inspection. I had a copy of the original, of course, and told him to go F himself on the inspection fee, and looking at my car outside, I told him to see for himself that the tires weren't actually rotated. The cops were still there, too. There wasn't much he could do but let me sign a $0 work order for nothing and walk away. It was glorious. And of course, the other repair shop said it was just the pads that needed to be replaced, and they were also able to machine the rotors so that there wasn't a hint of vibration. All told, $200, and a great new mechanic I could trust in a new area to boot. Seriously, when I find a mechanic or dentist that I know is honest, I'll remain loyal to them until I die or move more than 4 hours away. And our last story. Mistreating your best coworker? Okay. This happened fairly recently, and it's my dad's revenge story. My dad worked in a company that we'll call V. He was working there for about 10 years, was pretty high up, and everyone knew and respected him. At this time, a rival company was making more profits than my dad's thanks to 3 girls that were looking to change jobs. So my dad's boss, we'll call him T, wanted to do everything to get them to come to the company. My dad's position is art director, and he has a whole room of people under him. T, knowing that, offered one girl, the best one, if she came here and made some profit, she would get the art director position next to my dad. T never told my dad about this, so the girls came and surely enough made huge profits right off the bat. So T gave the girl her promised position. My dad, upset and surprised, went to T to talk with him. Essentially, he said that the decision was final and to just deal with it. So my dad tried. This girl, this B of a girl, she and the 2 other girls constantly slandered my dad to T and everyone in his room. I need to mention my dad has the patience of a saint and would never harm anyone. He tried to politely reason with them, to no avail, of course. Every day, he was telling me about how working with these girls was a pain and he was getting tired. Any conversations with T were pointless. He was blinded by success of these girls. He forgot that my dad is the best worker in his department and he was making them most of the profits. After 2 months of relentless gossip and just straight up BS from these girls, my dad had enough. We searched for a new job together for him, and we found a better one. But before my dad quit, after stating that to T, he took a 2-week leave. That was apparently paid for. After 3 weeks, he finally quit, leaving T devastated about the loss of his best worker. A couple days later, Dad starts getting calls from T to come back and you'll get a raise, but Dad was having none of it. Not 2 weeks go by and Dad's coworkers call him almost daily, saying that the girls were struggling to keep up and the girl that chewed out my dad couldn't successfully leave the department. Every day, things there got worse and worse. The atmosphere was terrible. Workers were quitting all over. In a month, the company lost almost 60% of their staff and couldn't keep up, so the rival company totally beat them. The company's profits were falling on the head and dropping almost 50%. Yeah, so basically my dad, by quitting, caused the collapse of the whole company. He still laughs about T and the girls. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.